Hey, Montel Williams here. Look, I've got some incredible news to share with you. I want to tell you about my brand new book that's coming out that's called The Sailing of the Intrepid. Now, this book is more than just an historical account. It's a tribute to the brave men who served aboard the USS Intrepid and a celebration of their extraordinary legacy. Writing this book was such an incredible story, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. So don't wait to grab your little piece of history. The book is available right now to order. You can go to montelmedia.com, and you can even get a limited autograph signed copy. Now, thank you so much for your support. I can't wait for you to read this incredible story of the sailing of the Intrepid. I'll see you on the pages. Well, hey guys, welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the podcast where we dive deep into stories that matter, stories of resilience, healing, and the transformative power of plant medicine. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we're exploring the healing power of psychedelics, specifically ibogaine, as well as the incredible benefits of cannabis. Joining me is someone who knows this journey firsthand. He's a former NFL star, a college football Hall of Famer, and now a leading advocate for athletes' mental health. Please welcome Mr. Robert Gallery, co-founder of and CEO of Athletes for Care. Robert, thanks so much for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, you've had such an amazing career in the NFL. Can you share a little bit about your journey and your background?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Iowa on a small farm. I have four siblings. My parents farmed, and my mom was a nurse. But I grew up in a real small town. Graduated high school with 34 kids. You know, the small town Iowa feel, and then continued my sports career at the University of Iowa, where I played football, and from there was drafted to the Oakland Raiders, and then played most of my career with the Raiders, and then a year with the Seahawks.
Second round draft pick too, right?
I was second overall. Yes, second overall in the first round. Yes.
All right, go ahead, man. Congratulations. So you had a pretty stellar career. Can you tell us a little bit about, during that career, you went through significant number of injuries and concussions and things, and they, of course, kept you on the field. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the game, right? That's how I think we all grew up. That was just part of football. Getting your bell rung, seeing stars. That just came with being a physical football player, and was I think ingrained in our minds. And that's who I was personally. I was a guy that didn't come out. I wanted to be the tough guy. I didn't want to let my teammates down. But as time went on, right, those symptoms got more and more frequent, more and more severe. And honestly, not till I retired from the NFL did I really realize these effects I was having and what actually was causing them.
You were guard, right?
Yeah, I played tackle and guard, but most of my career guard in the NFL.
And I mean that's a lot of people watch football on Sunday, and I guarantee you that 90% of the people who even think that they are like the ultimate fan don't know the names of the guys who are playing guard and tackle. You know what I mean? We just take you for granted. You're the guys that are in the middle of the field just beating the shit out of each other. And, of course, every now and then there's an injury on the field or something, and it's one of you guys. So they go back to the instant replays, and you finally realize, oh, that guy's blocking. That's what that guy has to do. My God, every single play, he's in the thick of it.
Yeah, that's they say at our position, if you hear your name, you did something wrong, right? So if they're talking about you on TV at a penalty, did something wrong that they're talking about you. So it's that's what I liked about it, not getting I didn't want to be the star. Us as a group, the offensive line, we just wanted to go in, we do the dirty work, protect the quarterback. Hopefully the running back has a bunch of yards, but it was one of those that it's an every down play, right? We're not like defensive linemen. We don't take a breather. We don't come out when we're tired. It's if the game's 80 plays long, we're in there for 80 plays, and you're hand-to-hand combat and head-to-head combat for all 80 of those plays.
And any other major injuries that you've suffered from while you're playing?
Yeah, I had a few. In college, I was healthy, never missed a practice or a game. And then, as my pro career went on, there was some small stuff and some big stuff. I had to have a back fusion. I had a piece of cartilage in between one of my vertebrae ripped, and my vertebrae was loose, so it actually hit my spine in one of the games, knocked the feeling out of my legs for a couple minutes. So I had to have a fusion in my back that year. I shattered my fibula, was a pretty big one. I was kept playing. I knew it. I knew something was wrong with it, and kept playing. I didn't want to come out, and then it ended up, about 40 plays later, it exploded. So I had to put that back together. So those were the major ones. And then towards the end of my career, some had a sports hernia, so I tore my ab. Played most of the year with a torn ab. So just part of the game, but it was some of those, as the years went on, took longer and longer to recover from.
And if I can, I had a couple other football players on who talked about the fact that, the training staff knows how to give you some glue, right?
Yeah, well, and it's partially us too, right? You don't want to come out, right? That was my mentality. I didn't want to miss time. So you play through those injuries, and everybody's hurt. By a few games into the year, everyone has nicks and bruises and has some injuries. But it's it's you're there, you're getting paid to play, right? And as they say, you can't make the club in the tub, right? If you're in the hot tub or the cold tub every day, missing practice, you're not going to be around. So they do your best to keep you on the field, right? And a lot of it goes into our mentality as professional athletes that, I'm playing through this, right? I wasn't coming off till that leg exploded,
But,
unfortunately, right? Doesn't make sense, but that's just our mentality.
but you're going to play through it, and they normally put you on something, did they not? I mean, I know there's a lot of free flowing drugs of the opioid kind. Anytime you need them, anytime you want them, injections and things like that, right?
Absolutely, right. That's how we got by, right? The painkillers, Toradol shots. That's especially later in my career. I couldn't have played without a Toradol shot, right? You go in before the game, gets rid of all the aches and pains. And then you get done with the game, right? And you're, especially as the years go on, right? You have these injuries, you have these pains. Now you're not sleeping, right? Sleeping pills weren't working, so then it was taking Percocet instead, right? Some abuse on our own side, but it was also, especially early on in my career, very easy to get, right? And it was something that if you needed it, you got it. And we're big, strong individuals that have a lot of tolerance, right? So you're taking way more than you should be, and then that leads to addiction, or just abusing it as the time goes on.
I know that during the time that you have to play, again, you've got trainers and others saying, well, then, okay, you don't need to have the pain pill, but I'll give you this instead, I'll give you that instead. So injections are the norm. Tell us about what happened when you transitioned off the team. I mean, because now you're a civilian, having to figure out how to navigate the civilian healthcare system. How was that for you?
That was tough. I mean, I think the biggest thing was just the lack of identity. You're an athlete. This is what you do. This is what I've done for so many years, and now all of a sudden you're at home, right? You're not at work every day. You're not in the locker room. You're not with the boys. So that was a very hard part. And then as time goes on, I wanted to get off the painkillers. I wanted to get off all the stuff I was on. So now I'm coping with alcohol or other things, to deal with these aches and pains I'm having. Um, so as time went on, you're lost, and then you're dealing with all these side effects of what you've done to your body and using things to cope with that.
And there's a spiral that happens, right? You start spiraling.
Yeah, for me it was the now I'm home every day, and yes, I can drink 3 nights a week, and my mentality and a lot of other athlete mentality is full bore, right? So I wouldn't sit down and go out with friends and have a beer, right? You're going to have 20. And it was just that mentality of full bore in sport or life that can be bad. And for me, then it led to coping with alcohol, and then having episodes of rage, these things that I didn't know why these things were going on, and trying to deal with that and figure out why these things were happening, right? My children laughing would send me to a fit of rage. The being in public, right? The anxiety, the losing my temper in public, the different things. And it turned into suicidal nightmares, right? And now I'm feeling like a burden on my family. So all these things compounded, and for me went to a very big spiral.
What was going on between you and your wife? You just mentioned it for a second, but what was going on between you and your wife? Did this put a real strain on your marriage?
Yeah, it was tough. Luckily for me, I knew my wife from college. My wife was a college basketball player at the University of Iowa, where I went. So she was a high level athlete. knew what it took, was around me my whole career. So she saw the good and bad. So she was very understanding, but also was there to help me through it. So luckily for me, she was never mad at me. She never was mad at me. She was, as she told me, she was sad for me because she knew it wasn't my fault what was going on and was trying to help me figure out, what was causing all this.
Wow. So at least you had somebody on your side. At least was trying to work with you.
Absolutely. Without her, it wouldn't have, I wouldn't have made it, unfortunately, because, as many times I told her, hey, I'm a burden on you and the kids, the way I act, the way these things are going on. I can't control it. I'm aware of it. I don't know why it's happening. So you guys need to, unfortunately, I told them they need to go, right? You need to go and get away from me. And she never once wavered. And obviously without that, I wouldn't be here talking today.
Sure. Now, you mentioned hitting rock bottom. What was the turning point for you, and how did you find the courage to figure out that you needed to get some help or take that first step?
If for me, it was, I got to a point where I finally opened up to my wife and a few very close friends. They knew something was going on, but when I really, told them the depths of how bad things were, and it just happened to be at the same time that I was getting a brain scan for my workers' comp case, and that to me was the aha moment. That was, they went in, and, the neurologist showed me a picture of a healthy brain, then showed me a picture of my brain, and compared the two and talked about my symptoms. And so uh, it was, funny at the time to me because we're sitting in there and the neurologist puts up this picture of my brain, right, that is mangled, has, looks like someone was using it as a punching bag. And I started laughing, right? And my wife's in tears. I look at her and she's in tears because she's looking at this. And she turned to me and was like, what the fuck are you laughing about? Right. She was obviously very irritated with me. And my answer, my thinking was like, I'm not crazy, right? Because I thought to that point I was going crazy with all these things that were happening. So to me, it was an answer of what was going on, and then my start for my healing journey.
Was that the rock bottom spot?
That was for me, yes, absolutely. Uh, right before that, um, uh, brain scan was for me rock bottom. I mean, I was daily, trying to get through the day. I was on, I'd be driving, right, and thinking, oh, people won't think I'm a coward, if I just swerve into this semi, right, and make it look like an accident. The suicidal thoughts was daily, and then the burden on my family. I would sit in a chair in my house shaking because I was so enraged at my kids laughing, right? Their laughter triggered, and I was aware that that wasn't normal or right, but it didn't stop it. So that's where I was before this happened, and was to the point where like they're better off without me, and I need this to stop.
There were, I don't know if the neurologist offered you up any things or options for treatment. Where did you hear about psychedelic assisted therapy? And can you tell me? Well, let's start there. Where did you hear about it? And then, of course, you thought it through before you decided to venture down that path. What made you think that this might work for you?
Well, for me, it was, I tried a year and a half or 2 years of modern medicine, right? I did everything I could. And then just happened to be part of my coping was listening to military podcasts and listening to their stories and how these guys got through things, what the things they went through in war. And I was listening to the Team Never Quit podcast that Marcus Luttrell does. And there was a gentleman on there by the name of Marcus Capone with his wife Amber Capone, and he was talking about his journey. He's talking about his college football journey, then his journey in the SEAL teams for 13 years, and then his healing journey, which was with Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT. And so I'm hearing this and hearing him talk about it. And to this point, I knew nothing about psychedelics. I had not experienced it. I had smoked marijuana a few times in my life. It didn't work for me. It wasn't something that I felt good on because I tried it for pain and all those things. So I knew very little about plant medicine. And I got home that night, called my wife. I was on a trip, and I said, "Hey, you need to listen to this. This is a story about me. This guy talking. It sounds just like me." So she listened to it. I got home and emailed their foundation, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. And the next day, Marcus and Amber called me. And so that kind of began my journey. And they were very open with me about what plant medicine was. And, hey, but hey, there's these other things you can do, right? And I kind of, told him, like, hold my beer, I've done all these other things, and I'm at rock bottom and I need help. And so after talking with them for about a week, he offered me a spot with a cohort of four other guys that he was taken down from his community, from the veteran community. And 3 weeks later, I was going down to Mexico.
And let's talk about that first experience. I mean, we got there. Sure, there was some trepidation. You didn't know what was going to happen. You thought you were going to trip out, freak out, run through the walls, that kind of thing. I mean, explain the whole process.
Yeah, for me, it was, yes, I was scared. I think I was more scared that it wouldn't work. So I did my research. I talked to a lot of people. I talked to some different veterans that had been through the program, and what it was like, what it did for them. I was talking with the doctors I was working with, with modern medicine doctors, and not necessarily getting their approval, but figuring out, hey, I'm on all these other, I'm on these antidepressants, I'm on these things, right? Because I had to get off all those things also to go down for this ibogaine treatment, because it can counteract with the medicine. So not only was I learning all these things new, but I was also, now I had to get off a high-powered antidepressant that I had been on for a couple years, right? And I had 3 weeks. I really had a week to get off it, to be clear in time to go down to Mexico. And obviously, the doctors did not recommend that, and told me I shouldn't do it because of the effects of coming off that. But I didn't. At that point, this was my lifeline, and I thought my only lifeline. And so I went cold turkey off those antidepressants, and it didn't go well. I did. They said I was gonna have a lot of adverse effects, and I did, right? But I had my wife, I had my friends, I had the support system around me to check on me. And I showed up at my friend's business raging, not knowing how I got there. All these things happened during that time, but luckily for me, I had the support to get through it. And then, getting to Mexico, and just the nerves of, like, what is going to happen, right? I knew, besides what I had been told and talked to a few guys, right? I was scared, right? I'm like, am I going to die? And this is how, this is the last time I'm going to see my parents, see my wife, see my kids. Just the fear of not knowing, right? Because as an athlete, you're always in control for the most part, and you want to, control the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So got down there with a great group of guys, and we take the medicine, and the journey began. And it was, at first, it was scary, obviously, because you're getting sensations, you're seeing things, all these things are happening. But I was prepared well as I could be, by the group I went down with, and had been meeting with therapists and the different people to help guide you how to get through it. And so as the journey began, there was a lot of fear. And then, at some point, I think I gave in and just, let the medicine do, what it was supposed to. And that's what they had told us beforehand. So it was, waking up that next morning, because at some point you pass out and get a little bit of sleep, but, and now I'm remembering, these visions I'm seeing, these things I was getting rid of or keeping. But I also felt deathly sick. I was throwing up, nauseous. I couldn't walk. Like my motor function wasn't working. So they put me in a wheelchair to go to the restroom, and that happened most of the day. So for me, I felt so bad. I didn't really realize, and was able to look back on what happened during that trip, or during the night. So as the day went on, and still felt deathly sick, wake up the next morning, and that day we do 5-MeO DMT. And so now I'm recalling some of these visions, right? I remember just a reel of my life coming by me as I'm floating in space, what to me looked like space and the stars. And this whole reel of my life is going by, and good and bad things. And I'm grabbing things out of this reel and throwing it at my heart to keep, right? It's like, oh, that makes me happy, I want this. And then I'd grab these other visions and launch them back out into space, because to me it was something that resembled failure, or all these negative things. So the next morning, I'm recalling more and more of this, and then going into 5-MeO DMT, right? Again, the nerves of, like, what is going to happen. I know what I experienced last night, but what is this? And that experience was, one of the most peaceful, amazing things that I've ever done. Right? they say it's, the God molecule, and you can, a lot of people, die they they feel what death is like, or ego death, or so all these things, but didn't really know what was going to happen. And for me, it was, I went to that white light. I felt like what it's going to be like when my life comes to an end, right? What, I went and saw my God, what that was for me, and it was the most peaceful thing I've ever been a part of. And then when I got there, uh, I remember talking to God, and all of a sudden I'm yelling at him that, hey, I'm a failure. Send me to hell. I'm a terrible husband. I'm a terrible father. All these negative things that I felt about myself. And at one point he said, you need to talk to her, and pointed over his shoulder. And then my wife appeared. And then I'm saying the same to my wife. I'm saying, I'm a burden on this family. You'd be better off without me. Please send me to hell. And then all of a sudden there was this enlightenment and this ego loss, and I felt this, I felt like I belonged and felt this love. And uh, then I was back. I came out of the trip, and I'm, laying on the grass outside of Mexico. Just remember the most joyous, like everything was so beautiful and bright, and everything was just so joyful. And not only that, but it was the clarity I had, the noise, before going to treatment. I had ringing in my ears, brain fog, severe brain fog, and I remember that the 5-MeO just, to me, turned the lights back on. Everything was super clear. I could hear the grass rustling. I could hear the birds, the cars miles away, and there was no ringing in my ears covering all this up. And then the brain fog, I just felt like my brain was working again. I remember saying that when I walked back, I was like, my brain works again, because everything was so clear and concise. And I was just so happy to be alive. We're all hugging, a bunch of grown men, myself and a bunch of hardcore veterans, special ops guys, SEALs and fighter pilots, and we're all hugging and crying. And so from that point forward, that for me, it was, the lived experiences was that I went home. Remember seeing my wife when we got back to San Diego, and she commented that she could tell the lights were back on. Right? She's like, you have life in your eyes. They're colorful. The bright blue and white, and then actions as time went on. I noticed that, hey, something's different. Right? I would not get enraged. I had no anxiety, no depression, no suicidal thoughts. I got home 2 days later, and I'm wrestling on the floor with my kids, tickling them and slinging them across the floor, things I hadn't done for years, because it would enrage me so much. The chaos of it would send me to this deep, dark rage. So the lived experience after that was like, wow, there's something to this, not only spiritually, but also what it's doing for my brain.
Have you had to go back and have not had to redo it and do it again, or no?
I have. So, everyone's different. I know hundreds, if not thousands, of guys that have done it. Some do it once. So for me, about 2 years later, I had got back into some bad tendencies. I stopped drinking after that first time. So I hadn't touched alcohol again. But I was getting back into some depression, some, self-worth issues, some suicidal ideation, not near as bad as it was in 2021 when I went, but we're in 2023, and some of these things are creeping back in. And so I went down again. I went through the process again, had some of the same realizations, some of the same visions, some different. This was the last time that I felt. And my second experience with 5-MeO after the Ibogaine was, I went down thinking I was still a burden, right? Still believing that I was a burden on my family, because when I would get depressed or would get down, I truly felt in my heart that they were better off without me, right? And then that led to suicidal thoughts, right? And so after this second experience, I came out of it, and I had the most vivid vision and real of what it would do to my family, my kids, and my wife if I was gone, right? And I remember coming out of that, and ever since then, anytime any thought creeps into my head, I go back to that. That's the new thought process. That vision comes into my head, and I know I'm not a burden, even on my worst days, which aren't bad now. They're not what they used to be. I am not a burden on my family. I am better here, supporting my family, being with my family. But it took that experience and that new neural pathway of thinking to truly believe that I wasn't a burden on my family. So, that second time in 2023, coming out of that, since then, I've been great. I went again in 24 because I booked it in 23. I was scared after kind of regressing. When I went down there in 23, I said, I'm coming back next year. I'm not going back to this place. Well, then I came back in 24, but it was all for growth. It was not for survival. I went down and just worked on the things I felt I needed to work on. So since 2023, it's been, the clarity, the negation of, the suicidal thoughts and the extreme rage. These things I have issues that every human does, but none of that stuff.
Have you gone back and had another neuroscan and scanned your brain? I'm sure the first time you did it was a PET scan, SPECT scan. I don't know which one you did, but have you gone back and had seen that same neurologist who said that your brain, looked like it had some severe brain damage to see whether or not anything has corrected itself?
The thing we've learned over time with the studies that like Stanford has done is the fMRI is for the healing of the brain, to really look in depth and see the healing in the brain. The fMRI is the scan you need. So the SPECT scan, my initial one, was great for showing like, hey, there are issues and there are places in your brain that don't have electricity to them or blood flow. Right, there are parts of your brain that are dead. So I did go back and get another SPECT scan because I was curious here not too long ago. But what I learned from that is, and from talking with the neurologist, is a SPECT scan is hard to see for instances like myself, and they said in dealing with patients who use psychedelics, is because of the psychedelics taking away the inflammation of your brain. Now the SPECT scan, typically shows, inflammation, right? The bright colors, the shape of the 3D image you get, has some to do with inflammation. So, they can't really answer it either. But there wasn't a ton of improvement on that scan. But like they said, and multiple neurologists I talked to said, hey, this is one thing we don't know why this happens yet, but we think it's because of some of this inflammation, right? We're taking all the depression you had, all the, all this inflammation now from the psychedelics has been calmed way down. So it's actually showing maybe some regression in some areas, right? But the true way to find, and that's what they did with the study with Stanford, is fMRI, and they can look in depth and see the new neural pathways, the new white brain matter. So for me, I know I'm better. Ask anyone who's around me before and after, and moving forward. I wish I had the fMRI before and after. But as far as a SPECT scan goes, it's great for the initial, but they're still trying to figure things out as far as what it can tell you after, especially dealing with psychedelics.
Well, looking back now, what do you wish you had known about your mental health and recovery while you were still playing?
Yeah, I think the mentality of us athletes, right? That wouldn't have changed how I played, but I think I would have been smarter with some of the. I hope. I don't know. You're in that moment. Would I have been different? But when I was getting these concussions, right, and staying on the field, not being able to see because of the double vision and the seeing the stars and staggering off, would I have thought back and be like, hey, this doesn't mean I'm not tough if I go out for a couple plays. So I hope that aspect I would change, but I also think I would have done a lot more post season, right? Or maybe even in the season. There's so many things now I do that you can do for your mental health, and I've never taken a antidepressant or anything since my initial ibogaine experience. But I microdose mushrooms, I microdose LSD at times. You can microdose ibogaine, right? I think I would do things, having the knowledge I do now, I would do things to help with the inflammation in my brain, right? Knowing that there's something going on, and then also being more open to talk about it, right? I held it in. I thought, this is just how it is. This is just who I am now. I'm just this angry, you're right, always foggy, just this person that when you can talk about it, right, and there's others out there struggling like I was, just so to talk, have a community around it for support.
There's still a lot of stigma around psychedelics, but science is starting to catch up a little bit. What do you think makes psychedelics, like ibogaine, so effective for athletes dealing with traumatic brain injuries and mental health struggles?
I think now with the study that Stanford did through vets, they did a cohort of veterans and studied the brain, right? So not only the science behind it now, but also the spiritual side behind it. I had my own spirituality. I was born raised Catholic, so I had my belief system, right? But the spiritual side of it took me to a completely different level. As far as feeling energy and all these things that I might have thought were woohoo 20 years ago, but just getting people informed on what it does, right? That's what the guys I'm talking about through my foundation. Guys have reached out, right? Have heard my story. You don't have to sit and suffer in silence by yourself, right? There are answers, right? And I'm not saying ibogaine works for everyone. It's a modality that worked for me. It works for a lot of people, but there are options out there rather than taking an antidepressant. And so to be able to educate people. And the thing with ibogaine is, and the work I've done with the Texas Ibogaine Initiative and the American Ibogaine Initiative and all the stuff with my foundation is, this is not a recreational medicine, right? Specifically ibogaine. There is nothing about ibogaine, that you want to do recreationally. On top of, there are some health risks, right? It's hard on your heart. So there are some things you have to do before you take the medicine, right? So I think that's why ibogaine specifically has gained some traction with the policymakers. That's why Texas was able to get the $50 million for research. So I think getting rid of that stigma of what this was, because it's an illegal drug, right? There are tons of people healing with all plant medicines, and what it's doing for people dealing with these issues that nothing else will take care of.
I mean, not just athletes and veterans, but first responders, anybody dealing with trauma can benefit. But access is still a challenge right now. What's Athletes for Care doing to change that?
So right now we're a new organization and just getting off the ground, but our goal is here short term is we're launching a nationwide conversation for athletes on traumatic brain injury and finding solutions to mitigate the suffering it causes. We need to inform people what this is, right, and to get rid of some of that stigma for just to say like our parents or that the generation that doesn't believe in plant medicine and what it can do. So Athletes for Care is going to story tell. We're doing a lot. That's why I'm honored to be on here to tell my story. I have lots of friends who have gone and experienced it, get their stories out there, and that will lead to us being able to be a part of some of the research that's taking place, the advocacy. So that's why I just started Athletes for Care. The care is community advocacy, research, and education. So to do all those things is how we're going to move this forward and really inform people, because once they hear about it, right, and hear the science behind it and everything behind it, right, it takes away that stigma, and then people are more open to this sort of healing, not only for veterans, athletes, but for anyone with trauma, right? Like you said, first responders, but the normal person who is taking a antidepressant, right, and has depression, all these different things, addiction, right? It's ibogaine is huge on addiction, so there's so many things that it can help with, and just to know that there's a different modality out there that you can use.
Well, there's so many people out there who might be skeptical about psychedelics. And what would you say to them to help them understand the potential benefits for mental health and for your brain injuries?
I think you have to listen to the lived stories, right? I can talk about my experience, right? But my wife lived it, right? And to listen to her talk about it, which she hasn't talked about yet, besides our close friends, but she's going to do for our foundation, is just do a story on what it was like for her to see these changes, and then to see the changes when I came home, right? So people, if they do research, look at the Stanford study, look at scientifically what these things are doing, and then talk to people, right? The real changer, for anyone and changing their mind is, someone that knew me or knew these veterans before, and then they see them afterwards, right? To see how they live they're free now, living their life. I'm not trapped, in what I was before. and I'm a functioning, highly functioning, clearly thinking human being, right? That, and my parents saw that I wasn't, my wife saw that I wasn't, and now that they see that I am, like that's the biggest change for me. Specifically, like my parents, right? They were that generation. Like this is an illegal drug, right? And now they see what it's done for my life, how it saved my family and saved my life. They're like, you need to keep going on this, and they're interested in it. They're talking about it. So I think just all those things in general.
You think that's going to help it become more widely accepted and accessible in the United States?
Yes, I do. And I think the more studies we do, which there are a lot of groups now putting together studies for all these plant medicines. So the more research we do and have done on it, right, and the data, right, because that's what's going to change people's minds. And then hopefully at some point to be able to serve this, get it cleared, and serve this medicine in the United States. It's a crime that, especially our veterans, right? They fight for this country, and they have to go out of the country to receive this life-changing help, right? And you can hear thousands of stories of these different veterans on top of athletes, but the veterans angle to me is the biggest one, because all the things they do and live through, and now they're forced to go to another country to receive healing.
The research on ibogaine and psychedelics is promising, and it's really popping up all over the country. How do you think? How do you see these treatments evolving, say, over the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a big push right now, and there's a lot of people talking about it, and for good reason, right? They see the benefits, they see the studies. In the next 5 years, I hope. I don't know, because politics, how politics are, and that's a big part of this. But just seeing what was done in Texas, right? You take that state, and the fact that they saw the lived experiences, they saw these veterans and different people talking about it and the science behind it, and they put money to research it. So people are willing to change, and if you bring forth the right information, the right people to educate, right, I'm hoping we see the trend that is going on now, with people being open to it and people wanting to research it. And let's get that research going to the point where now we have enough data that people will talk, the people that make the decisions will be talking about, hey, this is something that should be available to the masses in a regulated uh, therapeutic sense, right? It has to be very regulated, but it should be made hopefully available for us to get healing here.
I mean, it should just be like another arrow in the quiver for a doctor to choose from. If they need.
Absolutely, and not something that will have side effects, right? Not the side effects of an antidepressant like I went through getting off it, right? It's that's some of the I guess you could say conspiracy theory is like, who's gonna make money on this medicine that is very healing, that you don't have to keep giving someone, right? Maybe it's someone like me once or twice or three times, right? But for the most part, it is not something that you're going to keep someone on for the rest of their life, right? So that's the human nature of things, that I think we will get past that, as a society of thinking that way. And there are those people out there that want to get, those certain medicines, those certain drugs are, to keep you on them, right? I believe that. And this is strictly about healing. But if people see, what it can do, right, and how many people, especially with the mental health of our country in general.
Now let's take a little pivot to the left here for a second, or the right, whichever one you want to say. But let's talk a little bit about cannabis. I mean, can you share your perspective on its role in recovery and mental health?
Yeah, so like I said, for me, these modalities are different for everyone. But I saw it a lot in my career in the NFL. Right, it was illegal before, right? But it was almost comical, because we knew when the drug tests were, right. But guys were trying to do the right thing and using marijuana for pain, for all these symptoms we were having, right, and including myself as time went on, right, to having something rather than popping these pills that we knew were terrible for us. So to be able to see guys, and now that it's obviously more widely accepted, and it's not an addictive option to what people were putting in their bodies. I think it's great. That's the whole growth of all plant medicines, and in general things, that these natural plants that we can use to help heal and help our mental health, right? It's the
They no longer will kick you out of the league for testing positive. Yet at the same time, they still don't really truly embrace it. So what do you think it's going to take to make the league understand that so many of their athletes are having, it's like the NFL, so many athletes are getting some benefit from it. What's it going to take for the NFL to fully embrace it as a legitimate tool?
Yeah, I hope they see as time goes on, right? And I hope it's in a quick manner, but see the better health, the better mental health, physical health of all these players that are using it, right? And at the end of the day, good or bad, it's it's PR for them too, right? So it's they are walking the fine line of what they're backing, what they're not, right? But I think they're becoming more open to, hey, this is something that is really helping our players. It's keeping them from being addicted to painkillers, these things that we know are not good for them. But it's going to take the right people to stand up, right? The right owner, the right group of owners to say, hey, we need to get behind this, right? And not worry about what the stigma is from the past of these different medicines, and truly get behind the healing of the players, and for them, not only currently, but future down the road. There's so many guys that get away from the game, and mine progress quickly, right? But it's guys that are in their 50s and 60s that start having the issues from the concussions and TBI, right? And so what about those guys, right? This could be something to help guys while they're playing, so they don't get to that point later on in their retirement life.
Community advocacy, research, and education. That's what your Athletes for Care is all about. Give out some stats. Let people know where they can go to reach out and get some more information and maybe even chat with you.
Yeah, so it's athletesforcare.org is our website, and then we're on Instagram with athletes, the number 4 care, and then I wasn't a social media guy, but I'm on Instagram now, so official Robert Gallery, right? You can reach out through our website, through Instagram, and we've had a lot of athletes, former athletes, reach out looking for help, had seen my story, and if you feel you want to help push this mission forward, especially with the athlete community. And we're not just talking football; we're talking, soccer, skiing, all areas of people that have, because the leading cause for issues is the TBI, is the damage to the brain. So we want to be a part of, like we said, the research and advocacy, and we have a donation page on our website, and that helps us get the story out, especially here early, tell our stories, right, and then be a part of these big research projects that are coming down the pipeline that will help show and hopefully push this, the whole plant medicine forward.
The statistics are sobering. 35% of all athletes struggle with some sort of mental health conditions, and retired athletes, are at a much higher risk for neurodegenerative diseases. How do you tackle such a big challenge?
I just think it's one person at a time, right? The Marcus Neighbor Capone took that email or that call from me, right, and it saved my life, right? So that's the way I look at this. I'm going to take it one day at a time. Talk to as many people as we can, get in front of the right people. I'm talking with colleges. We're talking with pro teams. We're talking with everyone, just on the education side, right? Because it is staggering in the general, even the general, the fan that watches their heroes play, right? And they love the big hits. They love all these things that are going on, and that's what fans, should do, right? But they also, I think it's sobering for them and informational to them to be like, yes, we would do it all again. I would do it all again, but this is what comes with it, right? This is what can happen. They're seeing some of their heroes commit suicide. They're seeing these things that football and contact sports is causing, and if they want to be a part of it, we don't want football to go away, or soccer, or MMA. We don't want these things to go away. We just want it to be better, better for the athletes doing it in their current career and post career.
Maybe they should be giving the fans an option to add a couple bucks to their ticket price, just so they can make sure that they can be a participant in helping these guys heal when they may need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's so many things that we can see moving forward. just the littlest thing. And that's what people I talk to, the smallest donation helps us push forward, right, to tell these stories, to be a part of these things. And then it's just, it's for the future of not only professional athletes, but also kids, right? My kids, my son is more than likely going to play football at some point. He loves it, right? I'm not going to take that away from him, right? But it's helping your kid that's playing soccer, right? It's the whole research part of how can we keep their brains healthy, not only physically healthy, but also their mental health. And these things definitely help with that.
What advice would you give to athletes, whether they're just starting out or they're retiring, about prioritizing their mental health and seeking help when they think they need it, or just seeking help, period? Because sometimes to be able to convince yourself you need help, that's probably one of the toughest conversations you can have with anybody is yourself.
Yeah, I hope these conversations that we're having will show kids, right? It took me into my 30s, 30 some years old, to actually reach out for help, to talk to my friends and not think I was just the only one. So if we can install this in the younger generation that, hey, you need to talk about these things. Doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't, the whole masculine part of what's tough, what's not, or women to be able to, like, hey, this is what I'm going through. So if I could, and I do talk to younger people, like, hey, if something's going on, right, find someone that you can trust, right, and talk to them about it. Because one, it'll make you feel a lot better, and two, then you're not suffering by yourself. So if we can overall, and that's why I decided to come out with my story, right? Do I want to put my story out there and tell all these things because it was a tough part of my life? No, I'm a very private person, right? It's something we dealt with privately in our family. But if I can help one person, right, be able to open up, that's why I decided to talk about it, and that's why we need to continue to talk about it, because just holding it in ourselves is not doing anyone any good.
One more time, give out the stats. Where can people go if they wanted to get more information for Athletes for Care? Or
Yep, athletesforcare.org is the website, and then athletes number 4care on Instagram or official Robert Gallery, and you can reach out through all those avenues, and someone on our team will get back to you.
Okay, for sure. And look, before we wrap up, one more thing. What's coming? What's next for Athletes for Care? You got any big projects, any goals on the horizon?
Yeah, I'm a big part of the American Ibogaine initiative. So I was a part of the Texas Ibogaine initiative, and they secured that $50 million for research. So now we're taking it nationwide. So working with a bunch of other states that want to do some research on it. And then for us, as far as Athletes for Care, we're just going to continue to storytell. I've had numerous friends, ex-teammates, people that have reached out that have gone down and done the Ibogaine retreat and have had life-changing stories behind it. So we're going to tell their stories and then just continue to push forward with I've been in talks. I've got to know Dr. Montel Williams at Stanford. So there's all these, hopefully, research projects that will be coming around down the road sooner than later through different people to get athletes in to study and to show and to have data to prove to why this should be used more widely.
Well, Robert, your story is extremely powerful, my friend. The work you're doing is so important. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and being a powerful voice for change. I can't say thank you enough for being a part of Let's Be Blunt. And I wish you well. I hope everything keeps moving forward and upwards and upwards and upwards. And keep in contact. Let us know if there's any breakthroughs or anything you want to share again. Love to have you back.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on and all the conversations you have. So it's been an honor to be on here.
Sure, and if ever you want to come, when you want to come back, bring your wife next time, and the two of you can share a conversation about, the need to have someone there as your champion, the need to have somebody there backing you up. Okay.
Yep, and that's a big part of this story, and that's why she's agreed to talk about it, because it doesn't just affect the athlete or the person, as you know, right? It affects the family, it affects the spouse, and so if you have that support and also the support she needs and living through what she did with me, so it's yes, it's not just an individual thing.
Well, she's invited next time you come. Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right, my friend, you be well. And look, that's all the time we have for today's episode of Let's Be Blunt, Montel. But look, if you know someone who's out there struggling, remember, you're not alone. There is help out there. Check out Athletes for Care. Learn more about their incredible work and what they're doing. And until next time, stay safe, stay informed, stay blunt. Be well.
Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.